Now that you and your group have read and talked a bit about your story, you're going to work together to fill out this short story analysis worksheet in your packet. It's just a quick way to get some of the key points about the story so that you'll be ready to share it with your classmates who haven't read your story. So, the first part of the worksheet is pretty straightforward. It starts by asking for the title of the story and the author of the story. For this example, I'm going to go back to one of our earlier short stories in the unit, Top of the Food Chain. So, for title, I just put Top of the Food Chain. Short story titles are always put in quotation marks. And then the author of that story was T.C. Boyle. Remember that you can find the title and author of your story right at the beginning of the story. The next piece is a little more complicated, but not too bad. You're going to find a short author bibliography. That basically means giving a brief summary of who they are, just like I did with Nnedi Okorafor in the last video. So you can use Google or any similar search engine to find just some basic information on your author. Some things you might consider sharing are: who are they? Where are they from? When were they born? What are they known for? Have they won any awards? Or is there anything interesting or important that we should know about them? This is pretty open to you. Learn about your author. Don't take too long, it's just going to be a short biography. See what you find, and think about what your classmates will find most interesting or what will be most important for them to know in order to understand the story itself. So I'll give you an example from Top of the Food Chain. T.C. Boyle is a white American author born in 1948. He's written 16 novels and over 100 short stories, and also was a professor of English at the University of Southern California. Many of his stories involve humans versus nature. So you can see this is just a pretty quick overview of who this guy is, and it gives us a little bit of background on the type of story he writes. Okay, humans versus nature, that's probably going to be important. The second part of your story worksheet is a little more complicated, but more interesting. The fourth piece is the story summary. So imagine you've just seen a movie and you're describing it to your best friend who hasn't seen it. You're summarizing it to them. For your summary here, you want to make sure to touch on key things. What is the story about? Who are the main characters? What are just the most important events that happen? You don't need to go through everything. So overall, how would you describe the story quickly to someone who hadn't read it? So let's take a look at what that could be for Top of the Food Chain. A narrator reports to the US Senate about an environmental program he ran in Borneo. The program sprayed DDT to try to kill off mosquitoes, but it had a lot of consequences that he didn't predict. First, roofs in the town started caving in because they were being eaten by caterpillars. Then lots of lizards died from eating too much DDT, and then cats that ate the lizards also died. Everything went wrong, but the narrator tries to pretend it wasn't that bad and wasn't his fault. So my summary goes through some of the key pieces, but it's still short. It's not going over absolutely everything. If you want to learn more about the story, you can go read it. The fifth option there is the perspective. Who is telling the story? If the story has a narrator, or if it's being told from a third person point of view, like a camera following the action, you're going to tell us a bit about who that narrator is. Do we know anything about them? What are their biases? Is that going to affect their version of the story so that the story they're telling maybe isn't 100% accurate or unbiased? For Top of the Food Chain, there's definitely some interesting things we could say. The narrator is an American scientist, we never get his name, who is racist towards the people in Borneo and thinks he knows what's best for them. We can clearly see his biases from the story. I don't know if you remember some of the things that he was saying, but this guy can't be trusted to tell his own story. His perspective is biased. Finally, we're going to look at the theme of the story. And we've worked with theme a lot before so far, but as a reminder, with theme, we're looking for the message of the story, what the author wants to communicate. And remember, stories typically have more than one theme. There's not one right or wrong answer. You're just going to make an argument for a lesson that you can see in the story, something that connects to bigger real world ideas. So, one example of a theme from top of the food chain could be humans need to treat the environment well because one change can lead to a lot of disasters. Be careful what you do, think before you act. There are a lot of other themes we could draw out of the story, but that's just one that I decided on. So now, get together with your groups, look at your story worksheet, and work together to fill out the worksheet in the packet using the short story that you read together.